Hello and welcome to Grandad Stories. It was the night before Christmas and all round the house children were playing and making a racket. And any mouse that might be within a mile would be hiding away from the noise. Because 4 children and their parents had come to stay in the weird old house for Christmas. It was early evening and the children were playing upstairs in the bouncy bedroom, all excited for Christmas. Each of them asked the other, "What do you think Father Christmas will bring for you?" And each of them guessing many things, but probably half of them wrong. And then, with a loud click, the door closed and the children looked at the door, their conversation completely gone. And the door went all sparkly. It seemed to be extra bright this time. And the colours changed and seemed to glow from within. And then eventually the sparkling stopped and the door settled down to a multicoloured door. All the bright reds and blues and greens, each of them slightly shining. Now Joel bounced off the bed, ran over, opened the door. What he saw on the other side was just white. Everywhere was white, snowy and icy. And Joel ran out through the door with a loud "Ah!" He came running back in, shivering, hardly able to speak. And he said, "It's freezing out there." And Oliver looked at him and went, "What do you expect? It's icy." And he went, "The last time I went out into the snow, it was warm." And the children laughed. "Warm snow?" He said, "I'm telling you, it was warm." So they decided among themselves, Amy leading most of the conversation because she seemed to be the one with the best ideas. She said, "Let's raid the wardrobes." So they opened up the closets and the wardrobes and they took out all the warm clothes they could find. Some of them even belonged to Grandad and Nana. And they put on lots of socks just so they could squeeze their feet into their shoes, which now felt kind of small. Well, when you're wearing 3 pairs of woolly socks, your shoes will be a bit tight. They got on as many jumpers and pullovers as they possibly could, and any other clothes that were lying around. They looked like 4 bags of rags, almost as fat as Michelin men. So eventually they decided it was time to go. Even with the clothes on, it was still very, very cold outside. Their fingers were a little bit numb because there wasn't that many pairs of gloves. And they wandered along. This time, the door seemed to follow them. Maybe just in case. Then they saw sparkling lights in the distance. So they moved closer. And Joel said, "I feel like I'm moving." And then Oliver said, "Oh, thank goodness for that. I thought it was just me." For everything seemed to be moving up and down, very slowly, but moving nonetheless. And in the distance, a building appeared. It seemed to be made of ice or crystal or something, but it was all sparkly and bright. And through the walls, which weren't exactly clear, they could see figures moving around. So Max said, "Looking at this ground, I would say the door is around that way." So they followed Max because he was good with puzzles. Around, and then they found an entrance. And they knocked hard on the door, and a little man in red and white striped clothes came out. He had funny shoes that turned up at the toes and had bells on. Also, his ears seemed rather pointy, sticking out from under a tall, pointy hat that was a bit floppy. And on the top it had a white bobble. And the kids sort of laughed, hoping that he wouldn't notice. They were invited in. Come in, it's cold out there. So they went in and they said, what is this place? And this little fella looked at them and said, you know what it is. Of course you know what it is. You've been told about this place since you could speak, or even before you could speak. And Ollie went, Santa's workshop? Is this the North Pole? And they said, well, where else would it be at this time of year? So they went in, and it was much bigger than they thought, and it went down quite a way. And everything did seem to be moving, as if they were on the sea. Inside, there were lots of these people, all beavering away, seemingly making all sorts of toys, and boxing up others that they didn't make, that came from all around the world, getting them ready to go somewhere. And the children said, are these the presents to go out with Santa? And the little man said, yes, of course they are. But we are having a lot of trouble this year. We're actually running slightly late because on the international date line, it's already midnight and we should be on the way. And Oliver said, well, what's the problem this year? And they said, the sea ice, it's melting. There's not as much as there used to be. Things are moving now. Luckily, our crystal building can float, and sometimes it's like a submarine. It can go right down under the water and we can stay there for a long period if need be. And then pop back up as the ice begins to form again. But our reindeer are kept across the ice on land, in fact Greenland, and we bring them over just before Christmas. But we can't get them over this year, and unless they're connected to the magic sleigh, they can't fly. It's only the magic of Santa that makes them fly. But we can't get the sleigh there because there's no ice and there's nothing to pull it. So Oliver said, it's a small shot, but I wonder, the way we got here, would that help you? So Oliver went back to the door and opened it up to a cold blast of winter air. And outside, the door was still there, all sparkly, in all its bright colours. And Oliver said, no, that door will only bring us back to the bedroom. And as he said this, the door went sparkly and changed colours again. This time it ended up with a bright green colour. And Oliver said, shall we try? So the children all came running out. They ran across, opened the door and went in. This time Oliver was in a great stone hall with a raised bit in the middle with steps that went up. And on the top there was a great chair. Sitting in the chair was a great tall man with a long robe made of squares, and each square changed colour. And his cloak flashed this colour and that in different places. He looked a bit like a Christmas tree. And they said, excuse me, Your Highness, can you help us? And he said, I know of the problem. That's why I sent you. And while they were speaking, through the door came a large man with a great big white beard and white hair. He also had extremely strange clothes. For 1 minute you'd look and they were red with white fur and big black boots and a tall hat, just like the little people had. And then his hat, his cloak, his coat, everything would change to greens and browns, and the fur would even change from white to brown to white and black, all sorts of colours. Every time you looked, his clothes seemed to be a different colour. And he walked in, and they looked at him and stood back in amazement. And he looked at the children and went, "Ho, ho, ho!" He walked across the room and up the steps to the king and said, "Pleased to meet you again, Majesty. Can you help us out? We are way behind this year. I see you've sent us some helpers." He said, "They have done good in the past. They should do good for you." So both men standing on the top of the raised area turned and looked down at the children and said, "Are you willing to help deliver the presents?" And the children's eyes lit up. Who wouldn't want to help Santa? "Yes, of course we will," they all said. Of course, of course. How do we help? What do we do?" And the two men said almost as one, "We'll use the doors this year." And the children went, "The doors?" So they went back through the door, back just outside Santa's workshop. And as soon as they got inside, 5 great columns of smoke appeared and 5 white doors. Not just plain ordinary white doors. These doors glowed with a light so bright you could hardly look at them. And then slowly they calmed down and gave off a nice white shiny glow. And he said, "We must hurry." So his little helpers brought over lots of sacks, and on each sack there was a name. Not the name of a person, but the name of a town. So the children ran through the doors carrying these, and each time they ran through a door, they were in a different house. The doors seemed to know which house the presents should go to. They stacked them under the Christmas tree. They put small presents in stockings, because sometimes some of the doors led to bedrooms, so they had to be very quiet. On one occasion, Joel, who can't help himself, made a lot of noise. And a child woke up and said, "You're not Santa." And he said, "No, I'm Santa's little helper. Good night, happy Christmas," and ran through the door again. And they kept this up for quite a long time. Eventually they seemed to be catching up with the sun, for they were getting ahead of themselves, so they had to slow down. By this time the sun had gone round almost to where they lived. And Santa said, "No, children, this time I'll deliver these. You go into the other room and have a break." And he delivered the children's presents so that they wouldn't find out what they were until it was properly Christmas for them. So, when he had done that and moved on, and they had left their hometown, the children came back out after a feed of mince pies and carrots. Though only really Amy liked eating raw carrots. But they had some nice drink as well. And they continued helping until they got back around almost to where they started. And Santa said, "Well, because of you and the doors, Christmas has been saved. Hopefully next year there will be more ice and we will be able to go back to our normal routine with the magic chimneys. For I, though people know me as Santa Claus and lots of other strange names around the world, I am the king of the chimneys." And the kids looked and went, "Wow, that's amazing." Then 4 of the doors gradually disappeared, leaving just one. And the children said, "That must mean it's time for us to go back. But will we be late for Christmas?" And Father Christmas said, "No. When you go back, you will forget all about this. You will wake up and it will feel like a dream to you." So they went, "Oh, will we ever remember?" Father Christmas said, "Maybe one day when you're a little older and your own children are waiting on Christmas." So the children walked through the door. This time they didn't bring any mementos. They got into the room. The children put the clothes back where they were originally, and they looked exactly the same as if nothing had happened. Then the children sat on the bed and each one slowly drifted back, Last of all was the oldest Amy. She looked at the others and thought, I do hope I remember this someday. And she lay down and fell asleep. Then the door opened. In walked Grandad, saying, oh my God, Christmas Eve, 4 children asleep already. And you're not even in your pyjamas and not even time to go to bed. The children woke up and went, ooh, I had a funny dream about Christmas. And they all went, yeah, so did I. But they never really discussed it, so they didn't realise it was the same dream. And they went downstairs and had supper. But they were still feeling a bit tired. And they didn't know why, considering they'd just woken up. But when it was time to go to bed nice and early, they did. And in the morning they woke up and they all had nice gifts. Now this is the end of this story. Hope to be seeing you again. Remember, like if you like, good night and happy Christmas.